parking.
What about for like senior living or something like that? It's very hard to retrofit. There's very little access to it.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a possibility. I mean, you'd have to go through grant after grant after grant of doing studies to try to figure out what would happen here. If you want a sense of what that involves, talk to the folks up in Bakersfield.
Right. I'm just looking at comparative numbers. So would that be a $200 a square foot renovation to turn
Oh.
it into something like that?
Well, now you're into basically building apartments, and you count the bathrooms,
Right.
count the kitchens.
All the handicap
Very
accessible.
expensive, much more expensive. I mean, look at this floor space here. This is a wide open room.
We're going to convert this into an art room. That's easy. We build a wall across there.
Yeah.
We take the carpet out. We put in the new ceiling and the new heat, and voila, art room.
Yeah. No, it would be a lot more to convert this to apartments.
I don't see the seniors playing
Commercial
basketball.
office space would be great. It would be a lot easier to convert this
Yeah.
to that, because the corridors are here, the egress is here, the elevator is here, you know, the presence on the street, whatever you want to call it. The problem is where do all those people park? The good news for you guys is that middle school students don't drive.
It's not a big demand for commercial office space here.
No.
So that's another whole discussion. Anyway, I guess I get back, that's my point, is without trying to
You
solve
build it,
that
they
one,
come, right?
you do need to think about that, or you're going to have a building that sits here and degrades
Deteriorates.
over time. Talk to people in Bakersfield about the Brigham Academy. Talk to the people in Barry about the Spalding Middle School there that sat there for I don't know how many years. And finally, a white knight came in, the Vermont Historical Society, and they spent a lot of money to upgrade that. By then, that thing had deteriorated so much more that it cost them probably, I don't know how much more to do it then. I mean, they had water in the basement, they had mold on things, they had, you know. So that's the thing to think about. That's why I do think that at $100 a square foot, I'm actually very pleased at that number that came in at that level. And I think that's credited a lot to you guys of being willing to say, yes, we'll use a lot of the rooms that we have here. Yes, you know, we're going to make it work. We're not going to have to add on to this. You know, we've got a lot of building here, and there's no reason we can't have middle school in this building. So, and how do we use that space the best?
I've kind of said from day one on this that this is a two-part issue. One is we need a project, and I think we've come a long, long way in looking at alternatives, looking at designs, and now looking at costs. The second part of the project is how are we going to pay for it? And I think that, as you have said, and we have known from day one, the state funding that has been available in the recent past, whether it was 30% funding or 50% reimbursement, is no longer there. So the other challenge that at least some of us on this committee, I'm looking over at Michael here, are trying to begin to manage and talk to people about is, are there sources of funds out there, or where do we look to the sources of funds or potential sources of funds? How do we segment this plan such that there could be component, well, for example, we met with the Vermont efficiency gentleman a couple of meetings ago. We've talked about the access to no interest loans.
That is still a huge opportunity.
I think that we need help to try to segment the project into areas that may be grant fund potential. Obviously, I think we have to look to our state government and our federal government as we look at the future for different stimuli or whatever in terms of putting those things together. Can we get some help from you on this, or how do we how do we try to organize this aspect of it? My concern obviously
I
is,
understand. That's
you-
that's a much more difficult exercise than what I've just laid out for you tonight. I know it looks like I did a lot of work, but you know.
$10 million, a $10 million price tag is in a town that already has a very high tax rate, is not a very appealing sell. And I think we need to try to demonstrate to the voters, I don't think there's any question about the need. I do think there's some questions about the
Options.
choices and the options and stuff like that, which is reasonable. But certainly in terms of how we're gonna pay for it, I think they would like us to do just as good a job as we can in that regard. But I think that's something the committee has to do. We have to have, we have to get organized and we have to get busy.
Jim, I think just as you hire a grant writer for $5,000 to go find you $500,000 in grants, it's money well spent. Just as you hired him to do a schematic design, you might want to get a grant specialist or somebody that's a funding specialist and hire them and pay them whatever, $5,000, $10,000, whatever it costs to put together an equation for you to find everything that's possible out there. And if it gets you even a couple $100,000 or a couple million, I mean, just there might be that might be a possibility. I guess I would throw that at John and say, have you done that? Have you partnered with others in the past? Are there some folks in Montpelier, perhaps in your neck of the woods, that do this?
I'm sure there are.
There
I
may
don't
be-
have any names right on the tip of my tongue,
Yeah.
but you've met Jay Ansel here from my office,
Yes.
and he is much more tuned into those opportunities. We just spoke with somebody the other week who's more specializes in historic buildings. But boy, all these grant monies they're all pinched as well right now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
unfortunate. Now I do know that the one thing that is still available are those QZAB, those zero interest bonds through the education department. They got Vermont's allotment a year or two ago, just as the state cut off funding to schools, which had its intended effect of stopping school construction pretty much dead in its tracks. And if nobody's building anything, nobody's taking advantage of those zero interest bonds. So
They are, I talked to Kathy
Yeah,
Hill
they've got like
about those.
$20 million worth or something, I don't know.
$2 million
There you
are
go.
available. And what we would do is let the department know that we're interested in them. We can let them know of our interest before you vote it, but they can't start
Cool.
the process until the voters actually approve the project.
But there's not a huge amount of competition for them
No,
right now.
she said we're the only ones virtually, so.
Well, that's another way of saying
So
that.
that's a good thing, and it's could, I mean, by my estimate, that could save $200,000-300,000 over the course of
Right.
Annually, right?
30 years.
Well, if you back into just the wood pellet boiler,
That's the next steps here to talk
I mean,
about. But
and the interest estimate on the bond for that, he threw in
Yep.
at 4.5%.
that's right.
If you can get it at 0, you're already talking.
That's right.
Okay, let's take a break for about 15 minutes. We have some food, snack a little bit before we get going on number 7. So Joe, if you kill it. Oh, man.
In the system.
Okay, we're gonna finish up the meeting now. We just had our prime rib and baked potato. We'll go back to John. Thank you very much.
It isn't
I
residential.
better tell everyone that
Level
we paid for it ourselves. It's not taxpayer money.
Oh, good, you're gonna reimburse me for that?
Did you press that little button, Chris?
Yeah.
That was easy.
All right, so we're getting very close, I think, towards the bottom of the agenda here. This is my last handout for this evening. And again, we talked about the pellet boiler option, I think the last time I was here with Joe Kohler. we've looked at that a little more closely, and he's gotten you a handout. I guess I should start with a clarification that the estimate that we looked at before does not include the pellet option. So what this is saying that is if you wanted to put in a wood pellet system, you should budget an additional $350,000 to the project to essentially add a third boiler into the boiler room. So instead of the 2 oil boilers that we have planned, you'd have the 2 oil boilers plus the pellet system, that it would cover approximately 90% of the oil use, so that you would be burning 90% of the time you'd be burning pellets, 10% oil. So you would reduce your oil consumption by 90%. And the well, I'll just read this last paragraph here, which you can see if I can. It says a level principal payment analysis was performed. So he assumed a 20-year bond with an annual interest rate of 4.5%. Oil was assumed to cost $3 per gallon, which I think is relatively conservative if you're thinking about a long-term payback analysis. I'm not sure what you're paying right now, but it's probably not much or anything less than $3, unless you pre-bought this summer at a really low.
pre-bought.
It's a little less.
So it's a little less, but by next year, it's not likely to be.
We're estimating, I think, $3 in our 2000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So but this is assuming that low point in that fuel cost. He says wood chips. He means wood pellets. $210 a ton. He assumed an equal inflation rate on the two, which I think is conservative, because I think it's very possible that your oil would inflate faster than the pellets. And as he says here, that the pellet system shows a positive cash flow from year 1 with a first year savings of $16,970. So even after you borrow the additional $350,000 for the project, that first year's payment on that is about $17,000 less than the savings you get from burning the wood. Now, that puts you in a little bit of a quandary. It raises the upfront capital cost, but you're saving money right away. And so there's obviously sticker shock with a number like we put out tonight of $10 million, regardless of how many dollars per square foot it is. It's still, as you said, a big number. So it's a healthy, interesting conversation to have about whether the pellet makes sense.
Are pellets considered a renewable?
Yes, absolutely.
Would you, if we were to adopt the wood pellet option, could we reduce the number of boilers to 1?
It's possible that you could, but it's not really recommended.
What kind of how much?
And, I mean, the boiler itself is just not that expensive. I mean, let's say it's $20,000 or $30,000.
Yeah.
We can figure that out as a percentage of 8 million, and
Right.
you'd see that it's not very much.
Is it typical that schools have got 2 boilers?
Yes, or 3 in this case. I mean, even with just the oil, we're saying 2 boilers, because if one of them goes down, I mean, you've got 2 down there now. It's a good thing, isn't it, Rick?
Well,
Yes, it is.
the redundancy is the only reason that these
Right,
big old beasts have lived along way past their lifespan.
exactly. So, is it possible? Yes. And certainly with all the wood chip projects that we've done, which is a little different than the wood pellets, we would want to have kind of the full oil backup, because there's a lot of chip handling issues that can get screwed up on a wood chip. Less likely with the pellet, we could consider that, but I would not want to start there right off. And I'd want Joe Kohler to answer that question more than I, because it might make more sense to me than it does to him.